Okay, I might get started so we can let the other guys come in as they arrive. My name's Graham Robertson. I'm an enterprise facilitator with the Getting Down to Business program. Affectionately, I'm known as the older one. Tonight's webinar is the sixth webinar in a series of short courses designed to give you the tools to make you and your businesses more successful. We've got three more webinars for you for the balance of the year. The 16th of September, we've got a webinar on lean startups. September 30, one on challenger brands, which I will be delivering. And October the 28th on open source innovation, which I think Frank will be delivering. So turning to tonight's webinar, how to build a referral-based business, I have the pleasure to introduce our presenter, David Guest. David has 25 years of experience and background in sales and marketing. More recently, for the last 15 years, he has been coaching business owners and is now recognised in the top 2% of coaches in the Action Coach global community. He has worked with in excess of 6,000 business owners, helping them maximise their profits and build their the business of their dreams. David is a lifelong learner, committed to reading and studying everything he can in the fields of sales, marketing, business and psychology. In recent times, David has won several awards recognising his success, amongst these being 2013 and 2014 Best Group Coaching Program globally, 2012 Global Marketing Award for Innovating and Executing Successful Marketing Systems, 2007, 2008 and 2009 Best Client Results, and 2008 Best Workshop Presenter. Today I've asked David to share some of his best ideas and strategies that have proven to be very good at getting dramatic results. So without further delay, please welcome David Guest.
Well, thanks, Graham, and welcome as well. I'd like to welcome everyone to the call. We are running a webinar. What that means is that there is an interactive chat on your right-hand side. So as we go through today's presentation, Graham, anyone that's got any questions, let them throw those into the chat box, and I'll endeavour to answer those as we can, and if we have time permitting at the end. So thanks for the introduction. Very good coverage. Only one thing, I'll pick you up on the mistake before anyone else does. It's 23 years of sales experience, not 25. Not sure where that came from, but that's okay. Being a salesman yourself, I suppose you're prone to optimism.
Yes, I am.
Yes, so, but who counts? I suppose the reality is I've been in sales and marketing for most of my life, in sales and marketing and business. And one of the reasons I did that is because what I learned with sales and marketing is it's one of those things where you control your destiny. I realised pretty early in the piece that everybody is in sales and marketing. For anyone who doesn't believe they are, I ask this question: are you married? Because married people are in sales and marketing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're single, you're in sales and marketing.
Yes.
So pretty much covers everyone on the planet. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are recognising that that's the case. Now, what you'll notice there is also, when I started my sales career, so my first year in sales I had zero experience, and I learned something very valuable. And what it was is that in sales, the more you learn, the more you earn.
Yep.
So that was really where I started my education, my business education, and I got addicted to reading business books, to learning business psychology, sales, marketing. And what I found is that for every book that I read, it multiplied my income. So the return on investment of education was something that sticks with you forever, with me forever. So you can notice just from my sort of dossier online that I've read over 240 books on sales, marketing and business. I tend to make a rule of reading something in the vicinity of 1 to 2 books every single month.
Wow, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah, and I suppose the reason behind that, it's not that I don't know things, it's just that I get an extra depth of knowledge. Now, being a consultant or a coach, my job is to make sure I give my clients the best and the leading edge. And as you're probably aware with technology, even webinars, things are changing. And as they change, we've got to keep up to date with that. So, I've learned that the best investment I'll ever make in my lifetime is in my own education.
Yeah, I think, I share that lifelong learning. I think
Yep.
You can learn everything, once a day. Certainly you can learn something new. And I think the key thing for this is that ultimately people do want to make a difference, and they think differently, which is what the reading does. They act differently, and they're almost certainly going to get a different result, even though it might not be the result they're looking for.
Yeah, I know we were comparing libraries before and talking about, their business library that we both share, and sometimes those shared books never come back. But, everyone always asks me, what's the best book you've ever read? And that's like saying, which is your favourite kid? Right? There is no best book because all the books are good. It's a matter of just committing to the learning and the education. So I'm going to talk a bit about what I've learned, especially around the story today, which is about how to build a referral-based business. So probably why you want to build a referral-based business is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Now, everyone loves the notion of referrals, and one of the reasons they love referrals is because they're pre-qualified leads. Mm-hmm. But if we look at why referrals are becoming more important now than ever, some statistics that I've picked up, the average number of marketing messages that a person is exposed to, 1992 we measured on average an average person receives 2,000 marketing messages a day. Now that was in the form of banners, just radio advertising, television advertising, just messages that are coming at us all the time, reading the newspaper. By 1993 that number jumped to 3,000 messages today. If we look at 2012, the number of messages that people are receiving is in the vicinity of 30,000.
Yeah.
Now, we know this is true just because of the number of media that's available to people these days. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Google, we're on so many different media that just this advertising is just coming at us, and it's highly targeted because people know our profile, they can see who we are through our registrations.
I think just on that, I was reading somewhere the other day that the first time in the US that the amount spent by major marketers on digital has now surpassed television.
Yeah. And deservedly so, because really everyone's carrying a mobile device these days. People are demanding, they want their marketing to be relevant and directed towards them. But the other thing that happens with these digital devices is we've got so much marketing coming at us, we start to have to filter.
Yes.
And you know what I mean by this. We've got spam filters on our email. We're just looking at these messages going, oh, it's enough already. And so it sort of drives the cost of marketing up. Because to actually make contact with someone these days is much more expensive than it used to be because of the number of media. So if we talk about why you'd want to build a referral-based business, the first thing for me is that people love getting referrals, so we might as well work out how to systemize and get more of them. Now, when I say build a referral system, I'm not talking just about getting more referrals. I'm talking about systemizing it so that a business from the ground up is taking into account they want to be getting more referrals from day one. Now, there's a few reasons behind that. The first one being, as I mentioned before, you've got pre-qualified incoming leads. Because there's nothing better than someone ringing you, Graham, and saying, hey, look, Joe suggested I give you a call because you're the guy I need to talk to.
Yeah, it is powerful, and pretty much in everyday life, whether you're looking for a plumber or a digital marketing expert.
Yeah, so there's a couple other reasons we like referrals. The other one is that this notion of having a shorter sales cycle. Because if someone's calling you based on a recommendation, and I don't know, look, one of the things I've learned is whenever someone buys from you for the first time, you're making two sales. The first sale is you're selling yourself or your organisation.
Yeah.
That's the trust relationship. And then the second part of the sale is selling your product or service. Now, when you get a referral, that first sale is done by someone else.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're recommending you, which is suggesting that you're the guy to go to. So now really all you're doing is just talking about which product or service suits.
Yes.
Okay, so we get this shorter sales cycle. The third notion that I want to describe here is premium pricing. Because we live in a world now where people can get pricing online, offline, anywhere they want, and they can compare the price of your product or service in a moment. When they come to you as a referral, pricing is not the primary thing they're looking for. They're looking for quality of service. So by getting more referrals, we can actually charge more for our product, and we can get the premium client as well. And the last thing I really wanted to cover here is this notion of infinite lifetime value. Now, first of all, I might define what lifetime value is. Lifetime value is how much money a client will spend with you in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So, if you drive a car, a value of a person who drives a car to the automotive industry is around $250,000 to $300,000 over their lifetime. That includes tyres, servicing, buying a new car, registration, insurance, all those sorts of things. Now, the reason I say infinite lifetime value is because if I get a referral through a referral system, chances are not only will they spend money with me for their lifetime, they'll also refer me to other people.
Yeah, and I've got a real life example of this. I mean, we've got when we moved into our place in Hampton,
Yep.
We had to get an electrician in called Fisher Brothers,
Right.
and they came to do one job for us, and then they came to do another job, and then the neighbours came down and said, "Oh, look at those! Where'd you get those from?" So Fisher Brothers were there, and we had some new people move in into number 4 just recently. And of course, they saw what was in our place and in number 1, and they said, "Well, where do you do this?" And we'll just ring Fisher Brothers.
Fantastic. So what happens is building a referral-based business actually reduces the cost of marketing.
Yes, very much.
Because if we can build a business that generates its own marketing and so it self-markets, what we're doing is we're minimising our costs and we're maximising our profitability as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of businesses actually in our group, in our enterprise group, that serve the public.
Yep.
And I certainly think of one or two actually. Certainly the Hicks Hydronics heating business in Albury Yonga is definitely one of them.
Okay.
And there's another building business in Ballarat.
Yeah. And so this philosophy is very sound, but most people don't understand how do you build a business that generates referrals.
Yes.
So, the obvious one is you provide a good level of service, but I just want to go through some interesting statistics around this, some facts around referrals. So when we get a referral, we know we get a high conversion rate because referrals convert in greater than 70% of cases. So our conversion rate from inquiry to sale is over 70%. We did a survey and we found out that 63% of businesses said most of their business comes from referral. Actually, most people I speak to, I say, "Where do you get your business from?" They say, "Oh, we get a lot of referrals or word of mouth." Similar thing. And so my next question usually stuns them because I ask them, "Do you have a referral system?" And nearly 80% of them say, "No, we don't have a referral system. We just do a really good job, and because of that, we get referrals." So it's an interesting thing. So we all love referrals. We all know that they're premium pricing, short sales cycle, infinite lifetime value, but very few of us have actually gone into building a system to generate more of them.
Yeah.
And so we take our marketing dollar and we'll invest in advertising. But rather than investing in advertising, my suggestion is we start building a referral system within the business.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I just wanted to cover a few realities around referrals. And this is quite interesting. So the first fact that I wanted to talk about is the notion that people actually make referrals because they need to. Now, this is psychology 101, and we have a part of our brain called the hypothalamus. And anyone who's online can Google this. But ultimately, what it is, it's the limbic part of our brain. It's the part that deals with fight or flight. But it's also the part of our brain that is programmed to help other people. So human nature is that we help other people if they ask for help. And we all love helping people. And if I drill down to most people's desires and dreams in life, it's to help other people.
Well, exactly right. It's like going to work. You're not going to work to have a rubbish time. You're going in there to have a good time.
So if someone asks for help, our tendency is to say yes first.
Yeah.
So when it comes to referring people, there's almost a programmed need to refer. But then if that's the case, why don't people refer? And this comes down to the other side of the hypothalamus, which is the fight or flight side.
Yes.
So it's the same part of our brain that wants to help people that actually fears risk. Okay? Now, what I mean by that is you might ask me, "David, do you know anyone who could use my service?" And my first thing is, I do know some people, but I'm not sure if they could use your service, and I'm not sure if I want to refer them to you because I'm not sure what's going to happen. So there's all these risk components that come up. So the typical answer when you ask for a referral is, "I can't think of anyone right now," or "I'll get back to you," or and those sorts of things. And that's a risk aversion strategy. Yeah. So part of us wants to help, but the other part of us fears the risk. So if we know these things are occurring, then we need to work out how to get around them. Now, number 3, we want people to talk about our business, but if our business is boring, and what I mean by boring is that we do a good job, but we don't do an exceptional job, or we don't do anything that's worth talking about, no one talks about it.
No, that's true.
Okay, so if no one talks about a boring business, we need to consider, to make our business more referable, what are we doing to make it interesting?
Well, I think, I mean, that's very true. I mean, as leaders of your businesses, you guys out there, it is actually your responsibility not to make sure that your business and your business relationships are not boring. Yeah. You've got to have something to talk about.
Yeah, and so sometimes people struggle with this idea of, a boring business. My suggestion here is, and it's a good story, Paddy Lund, this guy on the screen, he's a pretty amiable looking chap. He runs a dentist practice up in Brisbane.
Yep.
And there's a couple of things around Paddy's business that's very, very interesting. So the first thing we probably need to know is that dentists have the highest rate of suicide of all professions. Now, not a lot of people know why that is, but all I can put it down to is the fact that they're inflicting pain on people by shoving their hands in their mouth, so they don't have a conversation going. It's one way. So he was going down this track, and he was a professional dentist, and he got to this stage where their career is all about filling your 40-hour week with 15-minute appointments. And if you can imagine that, 15-minute appointments for a 40-hour week equals 320 people that you're inflicting
transient conversation,
one-way transient conversations. So you can understand why it becomes a bit stressful. And so his whole view of the world is he was heading towards this point, and he said, I'm not happy with this picture. Why am I building a business that's going to kill me?
Mm-hmm.
And so he started to spin things around, and he sort of got to this point. He said, well, I actually want a business where I'm actually excited to go to work.
Yeah.
And so what he decided is, I only want to work with people that I choose. So he decided who his clients were going to be. Now, interestingly enough, he now runs a business that has an unlisted telephone number. You cannot get an appointment with Paddy Lund unless you're referred to him by one of his current clients.
Wow.
Now, he set that up deliberately, and he calls it by invitation only, to the point that the front door is locked, and there's a little sign that says, for emergency, call this number, and it's the number of the dentist down the street.
Love it.
Now, his logic is, when someone knocks on my door, if I don't know who they are, they may not be the sort of person I want to deal with, which is going to cause me stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than letting anyone enter my business, I only want people entering my business that have been pre-qualified by my existing client base.
Yep. Yep.
So part of his contract, if you ever become a client of Paddy's, they give you a contract to sign, and part of that says you will refer 2 people of equal stature to yourself every year.
Wow.
Which turns you into his salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the reason behind that is that he realised that by getting highly qualified referrals, he could charge a premium. Now, the other thing is he charges 3 times the standard dental rate. Now, some people think he's a rip-off merchant, but what he observed is he said, people come into my practice and some of them are loaded. They've got a lot of money. You know what they don't like? The fact that they have to wait and the fact that there is any potential of pain. So he said, out of all my clients, there's a top 20% that actually don't mind how much they pay. What they care about is how long they wait and whether they feel any pain. So he built his whole business around catering to those people.
Yeah.
And anyone who didn't like the fee, he would give the number of the dentist down the street. He'd say, look, I'm changing my business model. I'm catering to the people who actually don't have an issue with spending money but have an issue around being attended to. And so to make it easier for you, I've made contact with a dentist down the street, and he's quite happy to take your business.
Amazing.
Scary thing.
Even my local dentist, which I was at yesterday to get a root canal done, he's got an amazing practice. He's got all things new.
Yep.
Like he likes his new gadgets. He'll explain his new drill, and he put it in front of my face and showed me what his new drill looked like.
Right.
And of course I'm going, and what have you. But it does work.
Now, it is interesting because Paddy Lund, one of the ways that he makes his business not boring is he has a coffee machine in his reception area. It's not like the coffee machine we have here, which is your $2,000 DeLonghi machine. His coffee machine is a $10,000 espresso traditional coffee machine with the big handles and all the brass work on the front of it. So it feels like you're walking into a cafe. Now, he plumbed this into his reception area, so he had to get a plumber in to fit the thing. It wasn't just one of those little ones that you place on the bench. And when he put it in there, and this was now nearly 15, 20 years ago, people would ask him, why are you putting this coffee machine in? He said, well, it's funny, the amount of people that ask me about my $10,000 coffee machine compared to how many people ask me about my $40,000 x-ray machine pales into insignificance. So what he realised is the $10,000 invested in the coffee machine was a marketing investment.
Yes.
Because it made it interesting. And everyone who ever walks in there gets offered a coffee from the machine or a cup of tea. Now, we haven't talked about how he does his tea ceremony, but if you walk in there for your appointment, that will give you a list of 100 different teas that you can choose. And when you pick a tea, you don't just get it in a cup. It comes on a silver platter with fine bone china, and it's actually served to you in a tea ceremony.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I think you've just raised the bar in terms of what the enterprise facilitators are expecting next time we meet with our groups.
So the funny thing about all this is when he talks about it, he says, all of this that we do is really marketing, but it also makes our clients feel special.
Yes.
And when they feel special, they talk about not the dentistry, but they talk about the fact that they got this beautiful cup of tea served to them by someone who kneeled on one knee and poured it into their fine bone china cup. Now, he built all this through his team. He trained his team to deliver the coffee. He's also got a dental, this is another thing that he does, is he has a glass oven on his front counter as well, and he bakes dental buns.
Dental buns?
So what's a dental bun?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. What he does is he bakes sugar-free buns. And every person who goes in for dental work walks out with a basket full of freshly baked buns.
Wow.
Now just imagine what this causes, right? Two things. The smell of the buns and the smell of the coffee masks the smell of the dentist surgery in the first instance. The second thing is everyone who walks in there, and you've got to remember these are high net worth individuals, is walking out with a basket with a bow tied around it and a little label that says, with compliments from your happiness-centered dentist. So they're going back to work after having their filling done, and they've got this basket full of buns. What do they do with the buns? They usually put them on the tea room counter, and people are going, what are these? And the person would say, well, they're buns that my dentist baked for me. Your dentist bakes buns? Oh, yeah, he does it for me every single time I go in. So they're getting referrals because the business is interesting, not just because Paddy's a great dentist.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? So what happens is his team never leave. All of these employees he's had forever, right? And customers are clamouring to get in the front door just because of people like myself telling the story. They're saying, how can I get in there?
Yeah.
So he's never short of a lead. You know, and the other thing is he loves coming to work. He lives a fulfilling life. He spends his life travelling around the world teaching people his philosophy on business. Now I asked him, because I always ask people this, what's been the most inspirational book that you've read? And he cited Robert Cialdini, who wrote a book called The Power of Influence.
Mm.
It's a psychology book. And what it talks about is what makes people do the things they do. And a lot of the philosophies that he's put into his business is science. It's not just making people feel good. Everything is deliberate. Everything he's done is scientifically proven to get people to refer.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't happened by accident, just not because he's a nice guy. Because I asked him, he goes around the world teaching dentists how to grow their dental practice, and I said, Paddy, I'm interested. So how many of all these dentists, surely if you're telling them your secret to success, they would just copy you? And he said, that's the funny thing, David. No one does. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And he goes, well, I'm a little bit crazy. And I think you have to be a bit psychologically imbalanced to actually put a coffee machine worth $10,000 into your front counter.
Yeah. Because
we all love the story, but very few people are willing to do this sort of thing. Now, to have a dental bun oven on your counter and train your receptionist to bake buns all day, that's something weird.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's a great lesson, though. I mean, in terms of how you do it and how you do it differently. I mean, to make an impression for future referrals.
Yeah. So one of the last things that I wanted to just mention, he told me an interesting story, and he talked about this whole notion. He said, you know, there's a plumber that was out for dinner one night at a wedding with his wife, and while they were at the dinner, his phone rang, and it was an old lady that he knew that he used to sort of do some work for, and her tap started just water was pouring out everywhere. So he said to his wife, look, I've got the truck here. I'm just going to pop round the corner. It's not far away. I'm going to fix this tap. I'll be back in a few minutes. And so he just did this because this is customer service. No problem. Next day he gets a call from another old lady that he's never met before. And he goes over to her house and knocks on the door, and she opens the door and she looks at him totally disappointed. And he said, I don't understand, why you're disappointed. And she said to him, I thought you were the plumber that comes around dressed in a dinner suit. So it was ironic, but what it was is that by wearing the dinner suit by accident, it got talked about. Because it wasn't boring. When a plumber's under your sink in a dinner suit doing the work on your plumbing, it's unusual. So it created a word-of-mouth sensation.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go on to talk in the Challenge Brand webinar about lighthouse identities. But I mean, some of these are created lighthouse identities, but others are a lot more focused and targeted on generating new leads.
Yeah. Yeah. So just an interesting story, and you know, he coined the term CNE, or what's known as a critical non-essential, and I just quickly wanted to cover.
Yeah, this is important. This is a good section. Yeah.
So, see, if we talk about what's essential in a business, essential is delivering your service.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't deliver your service, you're not going to get referrals. Okay. So essential is that I get what I paid for. The next thing he talked about is things that are non-essentials. Now, what's a non-essential? Is what it is basically is providing things like cleaning up after you complete your work, finishing the paperwork in a timely manner. So essentials are things that need to be done. Non-essentials are things that make people feel better about doing business with you. But the thing that Paddy picked up on was there's things called critical non-essentials. Now, these are things that you can do that actually help people understand or assess when are the key points in time, okay, that people will make a decision or an assessment about your business. Now, he knew when people walked in the front door, the coffee machine was a critical non-essential, because what it did is it was critical because it made people feel at home, but it was not essential. And so then these sorts of things allow people to start talking about the business. Now, there's another part that's important here. Critical non-essentials are also things that people will make a judgment of the quality of your service. So imagine walking into a dentist surgery where the paint's peeling off the door.
Yep.
And as you walk in, you notice that there's old kitchen chairs in the waiting room that have got tears in them. So at this point in time, you're making assessments about the quality of the dental work before you've even met the dentist. So these are what's called critical non-essentials. Now, the last thing that he talked about was what's called a supercritical non-essential, and that really refers to the talkability factor.
Mm.
So when he brings people dental buns, when he makes them coffee, when he gives them a selection of 100 different teas, these are now things that actually make the business interesting.
Yeah.
And so if we look at critical non-essentials as things that improve conversion rate, supercritical non-essentials are things that generate word of mouth.
Yes.
Okay. So I noticed some questions come in. I'm just going to hold off on the questions for a moment, and we'll get to those as we sort of move through the presentation. So we'll just keep going through here because I really want to sort of keep on this track. Here's an important thing. You know, number 4 of realities of referrals is consistency builds trust. And the reason I bring this up is because most people think customer service is about providing exceptional customer service. And really, it's not the case at all. And the example I use here is the McDonald's franchise. Mm-hmm. So if I ask people very quickly in a room full in a seminar to rank on a scale of 1 to 10 the customer service in McDonald's, most people will rank it fairly high.
Yes.
So they'll go, oh, it's an 8 or a 9, unless people hate McDonald's, in which case they give us the negative answer. But I ask them, why do you rank it so high? And they say, because they provide great service. I go, well, let's just go through the scenario. You go in a McDonald's store, and it is a restaurant, by the way, and in this restaurant, you have to queue up at the counter, you have to pre-order your food, you have to pay for it in advance, then they wrap it in plastic, put it on a tray, and you have to serve yourself. So you take yourself over to the table, you can't even pull the chair in because it's concreted to the floor. Mm. And who cleans up after you in a McDonald's? Right? So I'm saying, please explain to me why the service level is rated as high. Yeah. And the simple answer is, every time you go to a McDonald's store, you have exactly the same experience.
Yes.
So we test this. We travel the world and we go, I know, let's go to McDonald's and see what a Big Mac tastes like in Hong Kong. And guess what? It tastes like a Big Mac in Melbourne. Yeah. They have a few different things on the menu, but consistency gives us a feeling of comfort and a feeling of service. So I think when people are looking to build their customer service, it's not about bending over backwards for clients. It's about being consistent in how you deliver.
Yes, that makes sense.
And it's a key message for most people in business because they're too busy trying to overcompensate. So they bend over backwards for a new client. Now my concern is if you're trying to bend over backwards for a new client, what does that mean, relatively speaking, if I'm already a client of yours?
Well, yeah, Telstra are very good at doing that.
Oh, yes. And a lot of companies are. And what they do is they try and win the business, so they overservice.
Yes.
And then, by contrast, that means that once you've been won, you're underserviced.
Well, once you sign that contract for 2 years, you're out of the game from the point of view of Telstra.
Yeah. So we need to think about consistency. So that's really quite key. Mm. And the last thing I really wanted to mention about realities around referrals is that marketing is a system. And I want to talk about the system, and I'm going to talk about how we can increase our referrals within our business. That's really the key message of today's webinar.
Yep.
So let's move into this. The level 1, so we talk about 7 steps to building a referral-based business. The first level is really people need to know you exist. Now, in the old days, that was quite hard because we'd pay advertising, marketing, we'd potentially network manually, we'd go and see people, and we'd start building our relationships. Now, if you think about how people get to know you, referrals generally come from customers. That's what most people think. If I get referrals, I've got to just do a good job for my customers and they'll refer me. But that's not the major source of referrals. Mm. See, it's underestimated where referrals come from because the next thing we need to think about is our suppliers.
Yes.
Now, often suppliers, depending on the industry, can't deal with customers directly. So they usually have to forward those customers on to a reseller or a retailer, which means if I have a good relationship with my suppliers, they can refer to me as well. Now, the difference between a customer referring to me and a supplier referring to me is a customer might know 5 to 10 to 20 people. The supplier is constantly getting inquiries and having to manage these inquiries through.
Yes.
So how do they choose who to refer them to? It's about having a relationship.
Yes.
The other one that most people underestimate is your own team. People are working for you as a source of referrals as well. Through their families, through their networks, we've got these people we can connect to. The average person's connected to 200 other people. So if we think about everyone we know...
And that's before LinkedIn.
That was before LinkedIn and Facebook. We have a lot more friends these days, don't we? So we move on and we talk about a thing called strategic partners. Now, this is an interesting one because everyone who is going to be potentially your customer is already someone else's customer. So what we need to do is we need to identify parallel businesses that service the same industries or same target market as we do and build these relationships.
Yeah, I mean, for some of you out there, this is a pretty important concept, very important concept.
For most people, they don't understand the importance or the value or the leverage.
No.
Because let's say I'm a business coach, a strategic partner for me could be an accountant, could be an IT provider, it could be a lawyer, it could be anyone else that services small, medium business. So if I find an accountant and become his best friend, he's got 100 or 200 clients that he can refer me to. So we're not talking 1 or 2 referrals, we're talking potentially hundreds. So I think everyone in business must have a strategic partner strategy. Okay, they must build those referral networks and they must understand how to add value to those referral networks. And the last one you mentioned already, which is the social networks, I call it interest groups. What I mean by that is you can jump on LinkedIn and you can build up your social network by just liking people or connecting on LinkedIn as you do it. Okay, and so what we need to do is we need to really think about when we go on LinkedIn, how do we connect with these people? Is there interactive groups? There's things like meetup groups. There's things like groups on LinkedIn. There's groups on Facebook. How do I join these groups and become a contributor? It's not about going into these groups to steal customers. It's about going into these groups to see if I can contribute.
Well, I mean, it's actually communities of like interests, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. So just got a few questions coming through. I'm just going to have a look at what they are. So Saba's asked examples of how to make B2B service not boring. I will get to that as we go through the session. And when do you draw the line on return on investment, and do you have a simple method? Yes, we do. And we'll get to we'll answer those 2 questions through the presentation.
Okay, they won't get lost, guys. They're on a big screen here for us.
They are. Robert Kiyosaki, quite a famous person, wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he said the richest people in the world build networks, and everyone else is trained to look for work. So how do I measure return on investment on my network? Nearly impossible. But what I will tell you is these days, see, in the old days, your net worth was measured by the amount of equity that you own, dollars.
Yeah.
These days, your network is your net worth. And I think it is so important for people to build their network, make their connections, keep those connections alive, because we're moving into a world of global business. So I can have a connection with someone in another country who can connect me into that country.
Yes.
So these networks become exceptionally valuable. And they're so easy to connect to people these days that it's not funny, but a lot of people aren't really investing the time in building this. You look at when a business is sold, there's 2 ways that we value a business. The first way is based on existing customers. So how much revenue, how much turnover, what's your customer base like. The second part is about the system that the business is driven by. So really the main part of the value of the business is the customer base.
Yes.
Now, customer base includes prospective customers or database and customers that are currently transacting. So we're often looking at, I look at businesses right now, my first questions is, do you have a database?
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, all the people that buy from us are in Mile. And I go, yeah, what about the people who don't buy from you? What do you mean? They don't buy from us, why do we? And they're missing the point.
Yes.
Right? Because we're building these relationships over time, and this is your network.
Yeah.
So we need to be considering how do we keep that communication going and how do we make sure that we're nurturing those relationships.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, that was one of our first topics at our first enterprise day.
Yep.
Was around networking and prioritising. But it's an incredibly strong concept, and yeah, the richest people in the world build networks. This is all.
Yeah. So the question that was asked about when do you know when to stop investing in this? Well, it's a tough question. But there's an interesting book. There's a fellow by the name of Chet Holmes, and he wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And in there he talks about this notion of what's called the stadium pitch. And this might answer the question. Because if I filled the MCG with all of your prospects, people who were in your target market, And depending on what business you're in, it could be CEOs, for example.
100,000 of them.
100,000. Now, there's a couple of rules. They all have to come, but they don't have to stay.
Yep.
So you get up on stage, and you have to try and keep them in the room. So I stand up and I say, right, my name's David Guest, and I'm a business coach. Straight away, 3% of the room are going to say, that's fantastic, because that's exactly what we're looking for today. Now, anyone who's done cold calling knows this is about right. 3% of the people that you call are interested in having a conversation. The rest of them aren't. Now, the reason they're not interested varies, but the ones that are buying right now, and I used to do a lot of cold calling when I was in sales, and every so often you would experience this, right? Every so often you ring someone and they go, how did you know we were looking for an X? And my response was, I must be psychic. I didn't tell them about the 100 other calls that I made to get to this one, because sales is a numbers game. So if we think of the stadium, by the time I've opened my mouth, there's only 3% that are interested. And there's 7% that are saying, well, we're willing to hear what he's got to say. They're open to the discussion. But the rest of the people in the room, they're going, well, we're not in the market for a business coach. So they break up into 3 major groups. The first one is the 30% that say, well, no, we're not thinking about a business coach. So they start getting up and leaving. The second group is this 30% that say, actually, we've thought about it in the past, but we don't think we're interested. So they get up and go too. And the last group, they go, well, we've already got someone that we're pretty happy with, or we've had this experience and we're not. So we've got this 90% of people that actually aren't in the market. So if we're not efficient with how we attract people or how we keep people in communication, we're very inefficient in what we do. So when it comes to building the network, it's not just about selling them product today. It's about building the network, and it's about keeping their attention, because they might not be interested today. It doesn't mean they're not interested tomorrow.
Yes.
And sometimes we need to invest the time to build the network, to build the relationship, to make sure that we're getting people to know about us. Because when it comes to referrals, you don't need to be a client of mine to refer to me. You could be someone that I came to one of my workshops. There could be someone listening to the call today that says, actually, a friend of mine's looking for a business coach, and David sounds like a good guy. Now, I don't know who that is, but I have to assume someone out there might be interested in building their business, and they might know someone else. So we build our network by getting people to know about us. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so once we get past this know stage, it's great for people to know who you are, but they need to like you. I'm not talking about Facebook likes here.
No, no, just not the thumbs.
Not the thumbs up, right? Because sometimes people think that the fact that people like us on Facebook means I've got a lot of friends. But the truth of the matter is we're talking about building relationships and building rapport. So how do we get people to like us? Well, there's a couple of things that are important to me, and one is the law of value. You know, another great book, The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, right? He really talks about your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And, you know, if we talk about exceeding client expectations and all of these other motherhood statements, what they're actually talking about is making sure you're always on the side of the angels.
Yes.
Right? So in any relationship, you want to make sure people think they got exceptional value.
Yeah.
Now, if you make that a law, that you actually over-deliver on everything you do, people are going to be very, very, they're going to build this relationship. They're going to start to like you. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're always giving them more than they're paying for.
Well, it's a great statement, and it really goes beyond your value proposition, which most of our young entrepreneurs have been asked to come up with in their opportunity evaluation summary.
Yeah.
And but in actual fact, that's the marker for what you're trying to achieve. It's not just a set of words.
Yeah. So the value propositions are quite an important term. And if you're not 100% clear on what value you're giving, then people are making assessments in their own way.
Yes.
So the law is really you want to make sure that whatever payment you're asking for, the value that you're offering exceeds it by a massive amount.
Yes.
And what that's going to do is cause the law of reciprocity to kick in as well. So I just want to talk about the contrast between what's happening with the internet, the old marketing and the new marketing. So the old marketing, right? Some of your students would have heard this. There's 4 P's in marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Now, there's 6. There's a few more. The problem I have with this is that place, promotion, price, and product are not as valid as they used to be.
No, they're definitely not.
Now, there's a reason behind that. Everyone's walking around with a mobile phone in hand shopping. Right? So you go into a store and you're doing your research while you're in the shop online. And you're looking for prices and you're looking for feedback and you're looking for reviews. So all of a sudden this place thing is not as vital as it used to be.
No, place definitely.
So this comes out of a book called The Referral Engine by a guy by the name of John Jantz. And he said that there's a new way of marketing, and the new marketing is all about customer service. So if we talk about customer service, he talks about the 4 C's.
Yep.
Now, the first C is content. And when he talks about content, we live in a world that's content rich, which means people can search any term on the internet and they can find massive amounts of information for free. So the question is, where are they getting their information from? Because if they're getting it from you, then you're adding value, right? So that's that law of value.
Yes.
If they're getting it from someone else, they're building a relationship with someone else because that person is the expert. So we need to make sure that we're generating content, we're creating it on our website, and we're giving it to our clients freely. The second thing after content is what's called context. Now, I'm not sure if you're sort of familiar with how I look at context, but context is about timing. Okay? What I mean by that is the information that you're giving to people needs to be relevant to what they need right now.
Yep.
Okay? So when I have a link that refers people to my website, and they have to drill down through all of the different levels of my website to find information, that's not context. Context is being sensitive to, if I'm looking for sales training, I type in sales training, I don't want to go to David Guest's homepage, I want to go to the sales training page. If I want tips on how to sell, I want tips. I don't want someone selling me stuff. I want them giving me what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So the content needs to be provided at the appropriate time in the search cycle.
Well, I mean, good search cycles actually have all those subheads already there, so
Yep.
you can pre-go to them. Just
Yeah.
wait.
So context is key, and the next one is connection. Now, when we talk about connection, we now have, if you go back 5 years, there was probably 5 or 6 major ways people communicate. If you go back 10 years, it was definitely no more than 5. There was telephone, there was face-to-face, there was mail, and there was electronic mail.
Yeah.
Now we have Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest,
Instagram,
YouTube.
Yeah.
There's hundreds and hundreds of different channels. Now, which is the best channel? There's no right answer.
No.
The question is, who are you targeting, and what is the way to connect with them? Okay? We're moving into a world of mobile. Everyone has a mobile device. If your website's not mobile friendly, you're about to become a dinosaur, because that's where people are searching. So we've got to make sure that we're connecting with our people frequently. You need to have things like chat boxes on your websites, because when people are searching around your website, they want help now. They don't want to wait till tomorrow, till you're open. They want instant support. So this connection's important. And the last C that I want to talk about is this notion of community. Now, what's community all about? It's technically what's called social proof. A community is a group of people that support the notion or the idea of your business.
Yes.
Now, some people do it by having a group, Facebook group, LinkedIn group, whatever group it might be. Other people do it by having a forum. Other people do it by having get-togethers. But what we're doing is we're allowing the community to build around our product or service, because it gives people that comfortable feeling that other people are involved. So how are we building community for our business as well? So these are the 4 C's of marketing, and I just really want to make sure that the guys listening are understanding that marketing is really about how you connect with your clients before they're clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an old marketer and I guess a new marketer, in fact, in terms of what I did at McCormick, my last assignment was, we were the first into digital marketing, and the major reason was that we couldn't go head-to-head with the big guys. We had to think differently.
Yes.
And we were first movers in McCormick globally in terms of digital marketing, and that began to open up all these issues.
Channels.
So I can see new marketing and the digital communication and social media revolution that we've had over the last 5 years especially has pretty much changed everything. Yeah.
If you think about the secret that if we think about how Apple became successful with their iPhone, what they did is they built a community around the apps. They said, you know what, we're going to give these app developers a way to make money.
And we've got lots of app developers in our group.
So by creating thousands of apps, all of a sudden it wasn't about which phone's better. It's about, the iPhone has thousands of apps, where the Android only has hundreds.
Yeah.
So it sort of became an obvious choice. And so this community thing is really how Apple got that sort of leverage into the phone market, because they weren't a phone company.
No, they weren't.
So how did they do it? They used the community.
No.
So we talk about the law of compensation from the same book, For the Go-Giver, and your income is determined by how many people you can serve and how well you serve them. Now, the reason I bring this up is that we can use the internet, the technology, to serve a lot of people. And sometimes people are very protective about information. But what I've found these days is information is readily available to anybody who wants to find it. So you want to be the source of this information. And if you're making money out of selling information, you're going to be in trouble, because it's so easily available. And we're seeing this in the music industry. To buy a CD these days is almost unheard of. To actually pay for music is unheard of. And one of the reasons it's unheard of because people can download it for free.
Yeah.
So how does an artist make money? So what they've realised is they don't make money out of the CDs anymore. In the old days, they used to give away the T-shirts and sell the music. So now what they do is they give away the music and they sell the T-shirts.
Yeah.
So things revolved right around. And I think people need to understand that the content is not the valuable part anymore. It's actually the experience. And so people will pay to go to see a concert, happily, because they're supporting the artist. But they're sort of funny about paying a couple of dollars for a song.
In fact, it's one of the key parts of entrepreneurship, and again, when we come back to challenger brands, but that one of the keys to this is to be the thought leader in your category, and and the big guys aren't always the thought leaders.
That's right.
And you use the Apple company. They only went to number one in terms of the size of brands in the last 4 years. They went from something like 6 to number one. So
very clever about it. It was due to strong leadership by Steve Jobs
and passion.
And the danger they have now is there's no Steve Jobs.
No, that's true.
So we don't know what's going to happen next. So then, look, once people get to like us, they need to learn how to trust us. Now, trust is important because there's a lot of people out there spruiking their wares, and there's a lot of people making friends with us. But how do we get to trust? Okay, and this is an interesting question because I often ask people what business they're in. And when I talk about what business are you in, most people say, well, we're an app developer, or we're a retailer, or we're a manufacturer. And some people don't get what I'm asking. And then a few people get smart and they go, oh, I know what he's asking. We're in the people business. And yes, I agree, but I think there's a step beyond the people business. And I think what people need to understand is that they're not just in the people business, they need to build intimate relationships with their key clients.
Yes.
Now, the way to get 1 million referrals is to make sure that your clients trust you implicitly, okay? Because we need to eliminate that risk factor, right? That part of the brain that is actually fearful of what could go wrong. Now, if I have an intimate relationship with my clients, if they trust me like they trust their family, all of a sudden the dynamics change. And there's no fear about referring. So we really need to think about how do we build client intimacy. Now, I know someone's going to ask me how.
Yes.
So let's go through the steps. So client intimacy really starts by delivering what's expected. Okay? If you deliver what's expected, I start to trust you. Okay?
So that's the minimum level, though, isn't it?
It is the minimum level. Now, I know that I'm moving to the next stage of the intimacy when my clients start asking me for things. Now, when a client asks you for things, we can take it one of two ways. We can say, what a pain in the neck. Why can't they just be happy with what I deliver? They're demanding more of me. Now, that's a very dangerous stance, right? Because when a customer requests something, you have an opportunity here. If you listen to what a customer asks you to do and you respond to that, they're going to start to hold you in high esteem. What that means is we move from requested to suggested. And what I mean by suggested is we're now suggesting to the client because they respect or they trust us. So expected is what we have to do, minimum. Requested is when a client actually opens their mouth and asks a question, we embrace it, or we ask them, what do you want us to do to improve the product? And then what we can do is we can add our own suggestions on top of that, and they will start to take our leadership on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is very important for business to business, especially.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the B2B space, it's critical because what we're talking about is ongoing relationships with multiple transactions.
Yeah.
So if we can allow our client to help us build the product, then what happens is the product is exactly what the client wants. And this trust relationship goes through the roof.
And in a lot of cases like that, I won't go into the experience that I've got in this particular area, but it's just a source of return business and goes back to the key thing of a client forever.
Exactly.
Or just about ever.
And so what we're talking about here is the term lagniappe.
Yeah.
Now lagniappe is a Spanish term, and it means surprise and delight. And the reason I put it in here is I can suggest things to my clients, but the best way to get them on side is to give them things they don't expect. People love surprises. I know what happens in our office is if a parcel arrives in our office, everyone gets excited what's in the parcel. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to think about how we can surprise and delight. Now, I've got a question from Felicity that says, where do we draw the line with the client relationship? I had a client text me wanting to come around to Sunday to see my baby. Where are the barriers? Okay, that's a good question, Felicity. I think when we talk about client intimacy, some people take it the wrong way when we talk about intimacy. What I'm talking about with client intimacy is understanding their needs as a business owner directly. Where we draw the line is we don't have all our clients over for dinner. We don't want them holding our baby necessarily,
Yeah.
but we want them to feel like family. Okay, so there is some professional distance required here, and I can't answer this question specifically because I want to know a bit more about what's going on there. But I will tell you that people buy from people they like, all things being equal. Now, all things being unequal, people will still buy from people they like. So we need to consider how do we deepen our relationship with our clients at a professional level. Okay, we're not talking about untoward things here. We're talking about how do we get to a point where they trust us implicitly, they write us open orders with no number in it, and they say, David, just fix it. Yeah, that's when I know I've got a trust relationship. Okay, so it's about building this over time. It's about structuring it into the business. So, difficult one to answer today, but I'm just really planting some seeds.
I think it would come down to, ultimately, Felicity, just to unfortunately, you have to make a choice. You've got to work out whether that's a step too far, business to family, and that is difficult. I would agree.
Look, I know at senior levels, CEO levels, family relationships are worth their weight in gold. We think about how do we deepen a relationship with a client? Well, we take them out for a meal. Now, breakfast is pretty formal. Lunch is better. Dinner is much of a stronger relationship. You want to have an ultimate relationship with a client? Invite them over to your house for dinner.
Or even just a barbie.
Right. Yeah. Because what happens is you've invited them into your world. Now, I wouldn't do this with everybody, but if we've got a key player, right, if we've got someone who's strategically important to our business relationship, why wouldn't we build a trust relationship like that? Yeah. Because that's a sort of network and trust relationship that can last well into the future.
Yeah, maybe Felicity's got to have a baby barbecue or something.
Maybe. So it really depends on the clients, but inviting every single client around, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. There is some lines that have to be drawn. Now, once we get this trust relationship, people are going to try us out, and this is quite an important part of the sequence, because when people try us out, what we need to bear in mind is that they might come and spend some money with us for the first time. I don't know if you recall this, Graham, but in the good old days, there used to be a thing called the Entertainment Guide.
Yes.
And all the schools used to sell this big fat white book of 2-for-1 deals for all the restaurants in Melbourne. And we used to think it was the best deal on the planet. 60 bucks. Yeah, $60 or whatever it was, 20 bucks. And you get this book with all these deals. Now, the problem with this book from a retailer's point of view is it encouraged me to go to all the restaurants because you used the voucher and it was done. Yeah. So we had this opportunity to try a restaurant. And if the restaurant wasn't out of this world exceptional, you'd probably never go back there because you had so many other vouchers in the book. Yeah. So one restaurant sort of singled itself out to me. Actually, I realised what they were doing. We'd get to the end of the meal, we'd give them the voucher, they'd put initials on the voucher and they'd hand it back to me. And they'd say, David, anytime you come back here, use this voucher and get your 2-for-1 deal. Now, they got it, where most of the restaurants didn't. Because as soon as you produce a voucher in some of those restaurants, they'd roll their eyes and go, another discount, as opposed to another opportunity where someone's walked in the street, never tried us before, and we have the opportunity to impress. Yeah. So, there's this statement, and this was an interesting statement I read, instead of whacking bushes, light candles. Now, what does that mean? See, the good old days of sales and marketing was really around cold calling, whacking on doors, and hoping someone would say yes, and if they didn't, you'd keep smashing on the door until they either buy or die.
Yeah, let her on the road.
Now, that was valid in those days. But what's happening these days is people are doing their own research. They're much more educated, and they're much more able to do their sort of due diligence. And what it means is when they're searching online, I want them to find my information about how to build a business, my information on how to improve sales process, my information on how to do this, because as I'm giving them this information, they're entering my world.
Yeah. Well, of course, all this goes back because there are so many price comparison websites now, which are fundamentally commoditizing lots of sectors and lots of businesses. So you really do have to think outside the box in terms of your non-price differentiators. Yeah,
and coming back to the network as your network, these days acquiring a database is the most important part of building any business. Now, you can automate most of this, right? There's automated systems out there for email, for what's called autoresponders, for really navigating that whole notion of how do I keep people not only educated, but give them the appropriate information at the right time. If you buy a book on Amazon, Amazon can almost predict what the next book you're going to buy will be, based on their records.
I understand there's aggregators you can buy on corporate Facebook too, where you get into a new set of potential users.
So we want to make sure that we've got some way of people moving into our funnel and actually becoming self-educated and dropping down into the purchase. Okay. Now, once we do this, we're going to get to this point where they buy. Now, I put buy there, but try and buy are very similar to each other. The difference is sometimes people will take a free trial from you, or they'll take your free report, or they'll take your sample, and they'll have a nibble on your food, and they'll go, oh yeah, that tastes all right. But getting them to exchange money changes the relationship. Okay? Now, if we can get people to buy from us for the first time, I get pretty excited. But I also have learned not to bend over backwards for new clients, but to make sure that they're impressed with the service enough that they come back. You know, Jan Carlson, this is a very old book, you can tell by the hairdo of this guy, wrote a book called Moments of Truth. And Moments of Truth, what Jan Carlson used to talk about, he ran Scandinavian Airways. And he used to teach his cleaners. And he'd say, you know, when someone walks onto one of our airplanes and they drop down the coffee tray, if they see a stain on the coffee tray, what's their impression of how we service our motors of our airplanes? And so he talked about these moments of truth. Now, similar to what Paddy Lund talked about with critical non-essentials, Jan Carlson used to say, people are making assessments of my business at these moments. So we need to make sure that when people are buying from us for the first time, that their impression is strong. Because the next step we want to get them to do is come back again.
Yes. And
when they come back again, then we now have a client that can be a regular client. Now, especially for the B2B guys, we need to make sure that they're getting this repeat business. Now, when we talk about repeat business, just some interesting statistics. Why do people leave businesses? And, you know, this is quite interesting. The first statistic was that 1% of people will leave you because they die. So you're going to lose 1% of your clients to death. The second thing that comes up is 3% will leave because they move house. 5% will buy from a friend. What that means is they've got a friend that's gone into the same industry that you were in, and they now feel obliged to support their friend network.
Yep.
Okay. Another 9% are going to be sold by a competitor. But it doesn't paint the whole picture. The majority of people leave you, or 14% because of product or price. That means your products become redundant, or they can get a cheaper price elsewhere. Yep. But the big one that's important here is this thing called perceived indifference.
Amazing.
Right. 68% of people will leave your company because they feel that you don't care anymore. Now, this comes back to what we talked about before, where people bend over backwards to win a new client.
Yes.
Because you might do that and get the client, but as soon as you stop bending over backwards, they're going, hang on a second. What happened to that fantastic service? What happened to them bending over backwards to make sure we were happy? I feel like if I go to a new supplier, I'm going to get that same level of service again. So you hear the terms like a new broom sweeps clean.
Yes.
And people say we need to shake up our suppliers so that they get hungry again. And all that really is about is that they're perceiving a difference between how you serve them in the first instance and how you serve them now that they're regular.
Yeah, so I think it's an element of taking the customers for granted.
Yeah,
basically.
Absolutely. So you know, we talk about how do you build this referral-based business, and I want to make sure I don't lose people on perceived indifference, but there's one last concept that I really wanted to talk about that's going to generate our referrals for us, and it's this whole notion of having an ideal client. Now, one of the first things I teach people in marketing, before we go advertising, before we go writing marketing materials, I say, who's your ideal customer? Now, here's the problem. When I start my business, my ideal customer is anyone with a pulse and a wallet. Okay? Because they are going to spend money with us, and if I sell well enough, they will. Now, as our business grows, those A grades all of a sudden aren't A grades anymore because we find better clients. So when we talk about ideal customers, I talk about A, B, C, and D grading your clients. Mm-hmm. Now, if we've already got clients, it's very easy. I suggest people generate a list, and they go through and they put an A, B, C, or D next to each client, identifying what they are. Now, what I talk about with D-grade clients is D stands for dead. Now, what I mean by that is as soon as the phone rings or an email comes in, you know this client's going to cost you more money than they're going to make you.
Yeah, cut the tackle.
Everyone knows these exist, but what they don't think about is why do I keep serving these people? And usually the reason is because we don't have a good marketing system, or we fear the loss of those clients. So we hang on to this dead wood. Now, my suggestion is those guys are going to go. Now we talk about a C grade. What's a C grade client? Well, really, in simple terms, it's a person that is a price shopper. What that means is they come to us because we've got the best price, and tomorrow they go to the competitor because they've got a better price. Now, the concern I have with those guys is I call them an uneducated buyer, because what they're doing is they're buying on price and not on value. Now, the danger with that is that they're not loyal to me. They're not loyal to my competitor. They're loyal to the price.
Yes.
Now, the price can shift in a moment. People can slash a price today, and people will just jump around. Then we talk about what's called a B grade or a basic client. Now, these guys aren't price-driven. They're more loyal, and they'll stick with me, and they love my service, but they don't do one thing that an A grade client does. A B grade client does not refer. So they're my favorite client. They come in, they never complain, they love what we do, but I never ever get a referral from them. Now, an A-grade client, on the other hand, is someone who I consider an awesome client. These are the guys that love our service but also bring us more business. Now, the reason I want to categorize based on this is I want to build my business around the A-grade client.
Yes.
Okay? Now, if we look at what we need to do, we draw a line, and I say the first thing is D-grade clients, get rid of them. Right?
Yep.
Sack them, hand them over to your competitors, Paddy Lunn, send them to the dentist down the street. We need to do this. Two things happen when we do that. First of all, we get our time back. Second of all, we feel 100 times better. Because you know what it's like when you get rid of a dead client, right? It's like, thank God, they're gone. All of a sudden I can breathe again.
Because they do take up, or can take up, disproportionate time.
And the other part is if they refer people to you, guess what kind of people they are?
Dead as well, eventually.
Exactly right. They're the same kind of people.
Yeah.
So we want to get rid of these guys totally. Now, the C graders are salvageable, okay? Because a C grader who's price shopper can be educated on value. Okay, so when someone comes to me at a discount, my job is to actually demonstrate the value of what I do so they never leave. So instead of having perceived indifference, it's the opposite. Now they perceive a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah. So these can't deal with guys. We're going to get them on lost leaders sometimes. People do come in because of a good deal.
Yeah.
But our job as soon as they come in is to say, right, now that I've got you, let me show you all the fantastic things we can do, to the point where they go, well, we can't leave because this is fantastic. Now, Bs, oops, I'm going to jump around. Bs, I don't mind. I'll take the Bs. But the A's,
be a good basis of your business. Anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not everyone's going to.
And they pay the bills, presumably.
Definitely pay the bills, and they're loyal. But the A's are the guys I want. So Paddy Lunn's business is totally designed around attracting A-grade clients. I suggest anyone that I'm working on a business model with, build your business around attracting the awesome clients.
Yeah.
But if you don't know who they are, how can you build a business around attracting them?
Yeah.
If we do this successfully, we get to the 7th step, which is referrals. Okay? So you notice that we've gone through 7 steps to go from know, to like, to trust, to try, to buy, to repeat, so they're loyal, to refer, which means they're raving fans, or they're as we call them, awesome. Now, the reason I bring this up in this sequence is we need to do all these things on our base business model. Okay? It's not just about asking for referrals. If you have to ask for referrals, that probably means you don't have a referral system. You've got to earn them. How do you earn them? Make sure that your business is not boring. Make sure that you've got moments of truth. Make sure that you've developed this intimate relationship with the clients. So make sure you're doing all of these things to get you up to this level. Now, going back to Felicity's question, if it's a D-grade client, you don't want to build an intimate relationship. But if it's an A-grade client,
you might.
You might.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, really, we're coming to the end of this whole thing. But I do want to talk a little bit about abundance, because it's an interesting word. And I think most people don't sort of grasp the scheme of this. So if I build a referral-based business and I get infinite lifetime value, my business grows itself.
Yes.
I don't need to worry about where my new business is coming from, because my business grows itself. Paddy Lunn loves what he does. One of the reasons he loves what he does is he doesn't have to work too hard with selling. He doesn't sell anything, right? It's a system. It's a process. And if the process works, then the business becomes self-marketing. Now, I know it's a bit of a nirvana, but it's definitely possible. So, the last thing I really wanted to mention is, you should expect referrals as part of your business. It should be non-negotiable. If I build a business, I expect referrals. And when people say, well, I'm not getting enough referrals, I go, show me what's interesting about your business. Show me your referral systems. Not just one system. There should be multiple ways for people to refer, right? Because if we expect referrals, if we have a higher purpose in our business than just selling product, if our purpose is to change the world, I mean, look at Apple, excellent example. That's a totally referral-driven business. They didn't advertise for the first 5 years. What did they do? They gave a couple of iPods to people with white headphones, the most trendiest kids in the schools, and everyone said, where'd you get those? Because everyone else had black headphones. So it became talked about because it wasn't boring. And, Steve Jobs, his vision, to put a dent in the universe, to challenge the status quo. Now, that guy had purpose. And people said, wow, I want to be part of this. I'm going to pay more for a computer that has less capacity than the IBM equivalent.
Yeah, I think the idea of the higher level of purpose beyond having a great functioning computer. Yeah, and it's very true. You've got to have that. It has to be encapsulated in the vision for your business.
Yeah. So just another point of reference for the guys on the call. There's a man by the name of Simon Sinek. S-I-N-E-K, and I'll get Ashley to pump that into the chat session. And he wrote a book called Starting with Why. And he talks about why are you going in business. Now, if you jump on TED Talks, He's got a 20-minute presentation which pretty much encapsulates his whole books, and it's awesome. Right? He talks about what creates a compelling business, what creates a compelling vision. And he says it's got to start with why you're in business, not what you sell. So what is your purpose? That's really key. The second thing is that this passion about the purpose of your business has to pervade the whole company. It's not just about the salespeople, it's not just about delivery people, it's every single person in the company needs to be on the same purpose. They need to understand why you're in business. And if they do, it becomes something that's it's so attractive that people just want to talk about it all the time. And the last thing I really want to say is that you've got to think that when people are referring you, you're doing them a favor, right? If your product is that good a deal, then it's a no-brainer. People should be jumping out of their skin to get involved with what you do. Now, if that's happening, the business will grow itself. So it's a philosophy around business. It's a psychology around how you set up the business. But you need to be a true believer in what you can do.
Yeah.
So,
and it fundamentally is a way of thinking.
Yeah. Now, I'm conscious of time, Graham. We've gone 5 minutes over. If there's any questions that people have...
I think we've got two that we've got to go back to, Saba's and maybe we might have a quick look at Edwards again.
Okay, so really an example of how to make a B2B service not boring. Well, it's really going to come down to something interesting about how you deliver the service.
Yeah.
It's going to be around something interesting about how you deliver the service. I mean, are you going to rock up in a dinner suit? That would make it not boring. It would take guts, but it would make it not boring. So it's sort of a bit of a soul search, and I'm not going to answer that question because I think what Saba has to do is has to go and do the research himself. Because if I give a suggestion,
Occ Health and Safety, health and wellness space, and a new business in milling teff flour.
So Saba, get online, look up Paddy Lund, find out his story, look up any books you can on how to build a referral-based business, get some of your own ideas, and come up with something truly unique. Because if it's not unique, then it's not going to be exciting. It's just going to be boring. Now, Edward Money, where do you draw the line on return on investment? That's a hard question, okay? Because what I'm looking for is the potential referrals that I can get out of a client. So I'll give you a simple example. In our business, what I'm looking for in a potential partner is how many businesses are they connected to? So I don't know if they're going to refer my business or not because it also depends on their personality. Do they like me? Do I like them? Can we actually build a business together?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's a tough question to answer, but I do understand if someone has limited access or connections, I'm not going to overinvest my time.
Well, but it's also, I mean, entrepreneurs are, they're about having limited resources.
Correct.
And, they're putting their own money at risk in a lot of cases. So I think one thing that does aid this is that that you've got a new framework for marketing, and you're not outlaying $1 million to get nowhere on television. If I gave you $1 million tomorrow,
that's right.
that'd buy a lot of other alternative media.
Yeah, correct.
A lot of media.
So sort of the other answer I give Edward is the old Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Yes.
Okay. The most valuable asset we have is time. It's not money. We can recreate money anytime, but we can't recreate time. So what I would suggest is you've got to look at how effectively you're using your time, and you'd be sort of looking to balance between the 80-20 rule. 20% of what you do produces 80% of the results.
Yeah.
20% of your network of partners will produce 80% of your leads.
Yeah.
But the other bottom 20% produce 80% of your headaches.
Yeah. And I think the other bit, Edward, in terms of the return on investment, I mean, and for the rest of the participants as well, is you've got to understand what your risk appetite is. How much money are you prepared to risk, and by knowing whether that's 5,000, 50,000, or 5 million, then you cut your cloth accordingly. I mean, obviously, if your appetite for risk is higher, then you can probably be a bit bolder and spend a bit more money and maybe suffer lower returns in the short term anyway.
Yeah, and look, the other thing is building your networks and making connections is probably one of the best investments you'll make. So we talked about your network being your net worth.
Yeah.
So it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Yes.
Okay. And how do we get people to know about you? You actually got to have some interesting content to put out there, and you need to have a network. Now, I think LinkedIn's probably one of the most undervalued networking tools on the planet at the moment.
Well, they're learning quickly.
Yeah. You can use that thing to just build your network so rapidly and find these. You can connect to anybody.
Yeah.
And, that whole 6 degrees of separation that used to exist, I think it's been proven it's more like about 5 degrees now.
Yeah. But it's also what you do with it. I know Cliff Rosenberg, who's the CEO of LinkedIn in Australia, and every week we get a blog from him.
Yep.
And I know other of my people on LinkedIn use LinkedIn strategically by making comments on current topics and, in other words, blogging.
Yep.
So the blog component of how you leverage LinkedIn can actually, being a thought leader in your category, not just bitching about stuff.
Yep.
I mean, having some genuine contribution to debate is one way you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, last question, back from Saba. Where can I find more information on referral business systems and nuts and bolts? I would do a Google on Paddy Lund. He's written about 3 books on the subject. The other name that I gave you was
the TED Talk.
The TED Talk. So that was Simon Sinek. That's more about the vision of the business. The Referral Engine by John Jantz. If you just Google these terms, you'll find these people. And there's plenty of books on the subject. My suggestion is they're the ones I have read most recently. The Go Giver by Bob Berg is a brilliant book, very short, very simple. The trick here is to actually decide that you're going to do this and go and buy half a dozen books on the subject.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me about where I would invest my time in building a business, it's the referral component of it.
Yes.
Because no matter how busy we get these marketing messages, 30,000 a day, referrals will always be strong.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's we're coming to the end. We're 11 minutes after 8, so I think there's a couple of things that really resonated with me. Certainly the impact of non-critical essentials, the things which people talk about beyond the core services and technical capabilities on offer.
Yeah.
Sort of that wow factor that grabs their interest. I think that's a very important concept. Certainly the 4 Cs versus the old 4 Ps, absolutely critical.
Yep.
The building of client intimacy, I think that's a critical factor as well. And the concept of lighting candles which lead to a pathway to your door, I think is particularly strong emotively and visually, as a visual concept, as a lead magnet. And the last one is the 68% of clients who don't come back because of perceived indifference. That is basically giving the impression that the company doesn't care about me anymore.
Yep.
So, as I said, a lot to digest. I trust that you enjoyed tonight's webinar, and we'll take away a couple of key learnings which you can apply to your own businesses and at least think differently and hopefully act differently, which is what the objective of the program is about, and tonight especially. On behalf of the Getting Down to Business program and our young entrepreneurs, I'd like to thank you, David, for sharing this important thinking with us, and most importantly for giving up your time, valuable time for us tonight. And also thank you to Ashley, who's been twiddling the dials over here as our producer and making sure that we're aware that we had questions coming through the system and making sure that we didn't inadvertently go offline. So thank you, Ashley. So thanks all. I look forward to seeing you at our respective roundtables in a couple of weeks.
Look, just a last thing, Graham. What I'm going to encourage people to do is jump on my website.
Yes.
There's a program on there called the Ultimate Business Blueprint, and the first month of it's complimentary. And what it is, just a series of short videos that I've created on how to build a business that works without you. So business structure. So I'm going to get Ashley to pump that into the chat session, but we might also add that to the email that goes out as a thank you for today's attendance.
Thank you for that.
And yeah, look, I'm happy to entertain questions from the guys after today's call. So thanks again for the opportunity.
No, my pleasure, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And hopefully we can get some excited entrepreneurs out there.
Okay, good night all.
All right, cheers.